BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello there, I'm Jane Lewis and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. It's Friday the 1st of November and we've barely caught our breath after all the action from midweek, and the League Cup semi-finals are upon us.
We'll be ready for that. We enjoy and we love going to Hampden. We're in a good place, getting players back for the weekend as well, and that'll give us a real good energy and freshness in the game.
What happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? We'll find out at Hampden on Saturday when Celtic take on Aberdeen.
Low ball across, might break to Devlin, off the post, chance for Morris! Goal for Morris! Aberdeen back in front and this place has just gone absolutely nuts!
Can Rangers ease the pressure on beleaguered manager Philippe Clement when they face Motherwell? And as if that's not enough,
Right, back heels, Hearts can't get this away! And Kilmarnock are ahead! Kyle Vassell making the most of some soft Hearts defending.
there are 4 Premiership fixtures to look forward to as well.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Hello there, welcome along. Thank you very much for joining us for this podcast. Gemma is former Scotland captain. She is with us, and so too is Michael Grant, the Scottish football correspondent for The Times. Plenty, guys, to get our teeth into. But before we do, it's been quite the spell over the last few days in Scottish football. What's been your highlight? Gemma, let's start with you.
Can I have 2 highlights?
Quickly.
One, Caroline Weir coming back to the national team and scoring a goal with Scotland qualifying 4-0 for the final round of qualification. There's a lot of qualification happening within for the Euros next year.
Cuthbert over the halfway line onto Evans. Kerr in advance. That opens up the space inside. Takes it through to Thomas. Brilliant back heel. Weir with a chance. Weir with a goal. Sensational football from Scotland. Caroline Weir marks her return to international football with a fine goal.
And my second highlight is hearing that you, Jane, are jumping in the pool for charity. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
This is not a highlight.
It's a highlight.
I am joining a team which includes my fellow sports broadcaster David Curry for Children in Need. We are going to be swimming a mile a day for 5 days in a pool.
I dock
There
my
you have
hat
it.
to you because
Thank you
I
very
couldn't
much.
think of anything worse. So
I know,
amazing.
I'm kind of oddly excited about it, but remind me I've said that on day 3. Michael, let's move on. What's your highlight?
Well, I didn't know anything about you going in a pool, Jane, but my highlight, I'm just going to go with Aberdeen beating Rangers on Wednesday night. Just the sheer drama of that result and the consequences for both teams, and the atmosphere at Pretoria was really something special. So it's hard for me to think of anything that tops that.
Yep, plenty going on. Let's first of all take a quick look at the headlines. Speaking of Aberdeen, they have to keep their foot firmly on the gas as they head into Saturday's League Cup semi-final with Celtic. That's according to their captain Graham Shinnie, who also insisted they've achieved nothing yet. Sticking with the Dons, their new women's team manager Scott Booth says he's excited by the project of trying to take the side from amateur status to fully professional. Former English Premier League referee Martin Atkinson is to take over as VAR manager at the SFA. He'll replace John Moss, who left after just 52 days in the post. And Ayr United are looking to close the gap on Championship leaders Falkirk. They travel to Raith Rovers this evening, and that match is live on BBC Scotland from 7:30. Right, the first of the League Cup semi-finals takes place on Saturday evening. Celtic against Aberdeen, 5:30 kick-off at the National Stadium. And Michael, you couldn't really set this up any better, could you?
No, to be honest, Jane, it would be a great final, given the way the two teams have started the season. One of them is going to lose their domestic unbeaten record in this match. Celtic will be favourites, of course. Aberdeen, though, have pretty much met every challenge that's been presented to them this season so far. And the teams, of course, drew 2 each at at Parkhead last month. It's actually 3 draws between them, and the last 3 meetings have all been drawn. Celtic won the Scottish Cup semi-final on penalties. My one concern, I guess, for Aberdeen would be that they put so much into the match on in midweek against Rangers, and you don't have much recovery time to come back and get down to Glasgow and play at Hampden against Celtic, who are a high energy team. They just test you from start to finish, and they were also able to kind of rest some players at the weekend in midweek. So that may be a factor, but listen, it's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, Michael talks about the physical exertions of that game midweek, but mentally, that win over Rangers, what kind of bearing could that have on this game when you're meeting the other half of the Old Firm, Gemma?
I think Jimmy Talleen set his stall out really, really well. I think everybody in the Scottish media wants him to come out and say it's a title race, and he's still with his mantra, it's one game at a time, and that frustrates us all. Look, I think you touched on emotional there. Look, I watched the game, and just even watching the game from the comfort of my sofa and the atmosphere that there was in Pittodrie, and I've heard people talk about it, it was electric. And that even, it gives you energy, but it takes your energy out of you, the adrenaline that must have been pumping through their veins. Jimmy Talleen would have had a plan for this. The guy seems like he's well planned, so he'll understand the challenge that Celtic pose. I don't think it'll change too much how they play. I think that's quite evident. Aberdeen play the way that Aberdeen will. He would have learned some lessons from the game against Celtic at Parkhead. And look, Michael's right. Aberdeen gave everything to win that game. Celtic had the luxury of rotating a few players in and a few players out. Celtic are a known quantity. We know what we're probably going to get from Celtic. Aberdeen, we're starting to see what we get, but perhaps Jimmy Talleen's got a few tricks up his sleeve. So it'll be interesting, and do you know what? If it's anything like the semi-final we had last April, I'm all for it, because that was a cracker.
Yeah, absolutely was a cracker, wasn't it? You both have spoken about the last time, of course, that Aberdeen and Celtic met at Celtic Park just a few weeks back. What will Jimmy Talleen have learnt from that game, Michael, and how does he approach this one? Any differently, considering it's at the National Stadium, or not?
No, I don't think he will treat it much differently. June, we spoke to him up at Cormac Park yesterday. I think we all know enough about him now to realise he's a pretty calm customer. He's got great belief in his team and the team spirit that he's got there, and the way that they play, and he's got his core principle is that we will play this way. You know, his team will play this way, and regardless of who they're playing, you know. Now, obviously, you respect Celtic, and he will have the advantage for him of knowing Celtic a little bit better now, having faced them at Parkhead. But he said it would still be almost equally difficult, although the crowd dynamic isn't quite the same at Hampden, of course. But listen, Celtic were the better side on that day. You have to acknowledge that. You know, they had a lot of late pressure, and Aberdeen were really defending pretty desperately, but expertly, but desperately. So, you know, I do suspect that Celtic might have a little bit too much. But as I said, you know, Aberdeen have got incredible momentum at the moment. They've got goals that are coming from a spread of players. They're making impact substitutions, which has given the team real energy in the closing stages of matches. So if it is still tight in the second half, you know, I think it's very much up for grabs. We
have to mention, obviously, as impressive as Talleen has been, Brendan Rodgers has never lost as Celtic manager at the National Stadium. So kudos to him from that point of view as well, Gemma. How will he be approaching this one, do you think?
Yeah, he's got a pretty imperious record, hasn't he? And to be honest, Aberdeen don't have the best record against Celtic at Hampden in cup competitions. He's a wily character, Brendan Rodgers. He's not going to be panicking too much about this. He'll have watched what Aberdeen have done, even though he doesn't say it in his interviews, and he's not bothered about what anybody else does. He'll have studied Aberdeen, and he'll be looking at his players that he's got available and deciding what's the best fit for this game. And he's got a wealth of talent there. He can decide whatever formation in terms of players that he wants to put on that pitch, and it's absolutely about when the two styles come up together, how much can Aberdeen soak up of Celtic, because they will come out like a rabbit in the traps. They will come out, they will come at them, and how long can Aberdeen withstand that to allow themselves a platform in the game to be able to play their game? So it's going to be an interesting battle, I think, in that sense.
Yeah, an interesting battle. Of course, the wide pitch at Hampden could come into play as well. That could be key, could it, in terms of the wide players being influential, Michael, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, normally you would say that's a disadvantage for Aberdeen against a strong Old Firm side, but I'm not sure that applies so much this time, because Aberdeen rely on width, and they rely on pace, and they rely on attacking into space, which you will get at Hampden. You saw it. You know, the Parkhead game was fascinating because a lot of Celtic's attacks were into traffic, and there was a lot of bodies in the way of them, whereas Aberdeen's goals and their attacks came into space because Celtic were further up the pitch and had most of the possession, you know. So because they're such a strong counter-attacking side, Aberdeen, it makes other teams worry about them, you know, and it means that they always have to be mindful of transitions and being caught.
You're listening to the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Well, the second semi-final sees holders Rangers taking on Motherwell. That's a 3:00 kick-off on Sunday. Gemma, just how big a game is this for Rangers and for their manager, Philippe Clement?
That's huge, isn't it? It's really, really big. They haven't really put any performance of note in at all. And there's we can talk about what Clement said after the Aberdeen game that smacks to me about a manager under severe pressure because he's seeing things that not anybody else is seeing. And you're coming up against the Motherwell. You're having a really good season, despite having all those kind of injuries at the start. You've got the likes of Liam Gordon and Tony Watt available to come back in. I mean, we don't necessarily need to talk about Lennon Miller again, but we shall, because the kid's a sensation. Given the captain's armband, I don't know if people have had the opportunity to listen to the pod that was out yesterday, him talking. Even the way in which he talks, there's a level of maturity there that is ridiculous for an 18-year-old. And that spills out onto the pitch in terms of how he can dictate playing that midfield, and his set pieces are dangerous, etc. So there's a feel-good factor around Motherwell. The same cannot be said about Rangers. It is chaos at that club, from the bottom to the top. And Clement's in real trouble. The challenge I think maybe that Rangers have got is, can they afford to get rid of him financially? Can they afford to buy him out? Versus, can they afford to not be second? And that's the equation that has to be done. And if Clement goes, will they get somebody in that could get them to second? This is not all about what Rangers do now. Rangers are 9 points behind Aberdeen. So what other clubs do they have to be reliant upon? So it's a really tricky situation, but I just don't think that the Rangers fans will stand for Clement to stay if they lose this match. But the question is, as I said before, is the maths behind that.
Michael, what do you think the consequences are for Clement if Rangers lose this Hampden semi-final?
I think if they lose, he doesn't survive. You can already see that the mood amongst the supporters is pretty mutinous after what happened in midweek, and you know they've already lost to Kilmarnock, they've lost to Celtic, of course, they've got out of the Champions League. It's funny because the League Cup obviously gave Clement a trophy early in the reign a year ago, and at that point it looked like a springboard. Instead, it's been a kind of almost a full stop. I mean, there's not really been much that you could buy into since then. You know, he did sustain a title race up to a point, but then they buckled at Ross County and they dropped points at Dundee. And that trait of failing domestic tests has continued, and you saw it in midweek. This is another massive domestic test for them on Sunday. I mean, they should still have enough in them to win. They played all right in the second half at Aberdeen. They caused Aberdeen real trouble. But there is so much pressure on top of them. If Motherwell were to start well, or to stay in the game, or to get the first goal, there's only 3 points between these teams in the league after 10 matches. It's remarkable, really, that given the gulf in resources, that they should be so tightly matched. So it's going to be fascinating. Listen, if Rangers score early and get a foothold in the game, they can relax a little bit, and the whole debate about Clement will be parked for a little while if they win. But I think you can see the direction of travel with Rangers and Clement, and it's not good for him.
Gemma, you often hear managers speaking about, it's only about us, we're only fully focused on what we're doing. But if you're the Motherwell manager, you're trying to exploit what's happening at Rangers right now and that perilous situation they find themselves in, aren't you?
See, this is one, I don't think he really needs to talk about that. Everybody else is talking about it. There's no need. That plays as a context. That plays as a background. So from his perspective, he focuses on the positives that he's got within his team. They got the win the other night, which was good. They needed that, the performances, and then focus on how good his players, how good his team can be, and how we can attack the weaknesses within this team. And that layer of the fact that there's fragility within the playing group, there's not a lot of confidence, this narrative around about there's not a fight in the dig, and he'll be saying, well, we've got that in abundance, and we've got the quality, and look what we did against Dundee United. We were down, but we can come back. So the whole kind of Clement, this stuff, that will play in the background and give him like a context and a narrative, but that's about layering on his stuff. Because as soon as you start to focus as a manager and talk about them in that way, then you're not focusing on what's the controllable. The controllable is what you do in that football pitch.
Michael, Gemma touched upon Lennon Miller. It's a chance for him to really kind of go on there on a big stage, express himself, showcase his talents. You would imagine the kind of young player he is, young man he is, that he wants to grab that opportunity with both feet.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I think they're talking about him being the captain, aren't they? If O'Donnell can't make it. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I'm covering that match, and I'm really looking forward to. I don't feel like I've seen enough of Lennon Miller in the flesh, just because of the way the nature of the games that you cover. Sometimes you can go a while without seeing a specific team. But Miller looks a fantastic talent. He really does. And even when there's pressure on him and eyes on him, and other teams are kind of trying to close him down and minimise his impact, he's still driving games for Motherwell. Listen, it sounds pretty obvious to say that Rangers could do with a guy like that in their midfield, but that's one of various problems they've got. So listen, Miller will be hugely important for Motherwell. Another factor in this, I don't think Rangers. I think that there's disaffection amongst the Rangers support towards the team. I don't think they've sold all the tickets that were available to them. Unusual, and again, that might be a little thing that Motherwell can use to their advantage. Listen, there's still going to be a big Rangers support there. They'll still outnumber Motherwell, but factors like that, it just makes it a little bit less of a daunting challenge for the underdogs.
I mean, we're speaking of Lennon Miller there. Gemma's already mentioned it. We have recorded a special episode of the Scottish Football Podcast with Nick McPheat in a conversation with him that is out right now, and make sure you check that one out. Right, before we go, let's have a quick look at the Premiership fixtures. On Saturday, St Johnstone host Hearts. It's Ross County going to Paisley to take on St Mirren. And then on Sunday, Kilmarnock are at Dundee, and Hibs welcome Dundee United to Easter Road. Let's quickly focus on Hearts. Back to the bottom of the table for them. It was a good start for Neil Critchley, wasn't it, Gemma? But the honeymoon period looks to be over.
Yes, and sort of no. Like, I still... They lost to Derek McInnes's Kilmarnock because he's a really good manager, and he manages to get Kelly to turn things around. But that being said, I still feel like there's this feeling of it's going to be okay with Neil Critchley there. Like, there's a sense within Hearts it's going to be okay, and it's just give him a little bit of time. He's got a couple of results under his belt. Didn't manage to come back in the derby and get a point. Probably should have taken something out of that game against Kelly. So it's how they respond to this one, I think, is really important for him to give us a direction of travel where he's taking Hearts.
And Michael, St Johnstone away in Paisley against St Mirren. I saw St Mirren actually. Sorry, I'm going to do that again because they played St Mirren on Wednesday, and I was at that game, so I should know that one. Michael, obviously St Johnstone losing in Paisley midweek against St Mirren after the good start they had under Simo Valakari. How will that have affected them ahead of this weekend?
Well, yeah, obviously it's a setback, but I still think there's a feel-good factor around St Johnstone on the back of Valakari's early weeks. Not just the opening couple of wins he's had, but I think you hear good things about the way he's handling himself and dealing with the players and dealing with the club and kind of embracing the kind of community element of St Johnstone. You mentioned a honeymoon period for Critchley there. This is Scottish football, isn't it? We're so early in judging people and saying, well, the honeymoon is over. He's lost his third game. If they're both at the wrong end of the table, so they've both inherited issues and problems that will have to be ironed out if they're to climb. I think Hearts have got a pretty good record in this fixture traditionally. you could say that doesn't make much difference with new managers, but you would maybe think that they might have enough again. But yeah, it'll be interesting because they're both still got high hopes for what they're going to achieve under the new managers.
Well, let's quickly turn our attention to the fixtures on Sunday. Hibs against Dundee United. Hibs getting that draw away to Ross County midweek. Of course, they kept a clean sheet, Gemma. I guess David Gray will be hoping that's something for them to build upon.
I mean, the way you say that tells us everything we need to say about that, because it was a game just full of Hibs had a lot of chances, but none of them you were convinced they were ever scoring. The positivity, as you say, is the clean sheet. And I think that's what Don Cowie took out for Ross County as well. It's never an easy place to go all the way up to Dingwall. And to get a point, I guess, gives Hibs a level of momentum. 2 undefeated games now, 2 points. But they need more. David Gray absolutely needs more. He needs a 90-minute performance from his team. He needs a statement of intent. He needs a back line and a goalkeeper that looks solid, that look like they communicate, that look confident defending and confident on the ball. And he needs his attacking players just to go out there and absolutely light it up. That would tell me that Hibs are going in the right direction. I think that's a little bit too much to ask for from a step from where they were. They have been to where they're going. But if he can get 60 minutes out of them and not concede in the last couple of minutes of a game, and perhaps if he gets a draw out of the United game, I think that's a positive for Hibs, just where they are at this moment in time.
And the final game on Sunday, Michael, Dundee against Kilmarnock. What are you expecting from that one? Kilmarnock, they look to have found their groove, don't they?
Yeah, Kilmarnock looked like they were struggling, didn't they? And then they've hit a run of form. And as Gemma says, McInnes is a very accomplished manager, very experienced manager. I dare say, actually, funnily enough, there'll be a lot of comment about McInnes for the Rangers job if it becomes available in the coming days or weeks. The interesting thing about this fixture is always it's the two great pals, isn't it, Doherty and McInnes? Yeah. But you're struggling. Dundee are struggling. They've lost 6 of the last 7, I think. So Doc's under a little bit of pressure there, although he's done minor miracles since he joined them. But Kilmarnock, I think are beginning to look pretty strong.
Thanks, guys. That's all we've got time for this podcast. Many thanks to Michael Grant and Gemma Fay, and thank you very much for listening as well. You can hear live coverage of all the weekend's action on BBC Radio Scotland across the weekend, and Sports Scene will bring you the highlights on Saturday, Sunday and Monday evenings. And remember, from Monday, I'm going to be swimming a mile a day for 5 days as part of the BBC Children in Need 1,000 Mile Challenge. I cannot wait, trust me. If you'd like to support me and the rest of the team, just go to bbc.co.uk/swim. That's it. Enjoy your football this weekend. Bye-bye.
The Scotland Rugby podcast is now available every Tuesday. Join me, Andy Burke and Tom English. Just head to BBC Sounds and subscribe to the Scotland Rugby podcast.
It's just seismic stuff.
There's bucket hats as well.
Oh, really? Yeah. Is this a rugby podcast or is this a fashion podcast?
Why can't it be a bit of both?
Rugby. Let's get on to rugby.
There's a lot to be excited about.
Today's guest, John McGuigan.
Clubs are at the absolute bedrock of everything Scottish rugby's about.
The Rugby Sports Sound podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.
You cannot help but be so excited.
It's going to be the centre of the rugby universe.
BBC Sounds. BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
It's obviously massive, happening at such a young age. Football's been my escape. Kind of just a blank canvas in my brain and just enjoying it. So football's been a massive, massive takeaway from such a devastating thing, but I just kind of focus on my football and hopefully I'm doing her proud.
I'm Nick McPheat and welcome to a special edition of the BBC's Scottish Football Podcast. In the lead up to Sunday's League Cup semi-final between Motherwell and Rangers, I had the pleasure of sitting down with the Fir Park side's 18-year-old midfielder Lennon Miller.
It's Miller. Different side, same outcome. Lennon Miller, he can do no wrong at the moment. Lennon Miller, chance to make it 2. Lennon Miller at the double for Motherwell. The teenage sensation with an absolutely fabulous finish.
Since breaking into the first team last season, he's had a huge impact and has developed into one of the most exciting talents in the Scottish game. But he hasn't had it easy. At the age of just 5, Lennon had to deal with the death of his mum. In this candid interview, he talks about dealing with that grief and trauma at such an early age, how it drives him and his ambitions for the future. And you might have heard of his dad Lee, a former Scotland international striker. We also hear what he's had to say about his son's childhood and career so far in this bonus episode.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Is it Lennon Miller, the designated penalty taker? Young man taking on the responsibility. His dad Lee's just across to the left in the main stand here.
That night up in the stand is the most nervous I have ever been watching a game or being at a game. Like I could hardly watch, to be honest. I knew he'd be the calmest person in the stadium, but all I could think of was, please score, please don't dink it, please score, please don't dink it. So no, to see it go in was, I'm so proud of what he's achieved so far in his career, and just it goes from strength to strength. And I said to him after the game, I said, how were you? Were you nervous and stuff? And he was like, no, I was alright, but I was dinking it up to the last step. And I went, nah, no chance.
Miller scores! And Motherwell surely now on the brink of a place in the semi-final of the League Cup. The fans are spilling onto the pitch. They are absolutely delirious as Lennon Miller makes it. Motherwell 2, Dundee United 1.
Lennon, we're sitting looking at that goal there where you scored the penalty to send Motherwell into the semi-final of the League Cup. Your poor dad was sitting somewhere in this stand, unable to watch. I spoke to him and he said what was going through his head at the time was, please score, don't dink it. Why was he thinking that? Did he think that you had that in you to do that in that situation?
Yeah, because I speak to my dad quite a lot about taking penalties as I've done like my 18s journey, and I've always had a dink in my locker. Like I've always enjoyed seeing the goalie raging after I've dinked it, and I've probably said to him before that if I get one I'd dink it, but I seen the goalie go early for that one, so I thought I'd keep it no dink and then score, make sure I get through.
What do you think that says about you as a player, that you would consider doing that in such a high pressure situation?
Yeah, I've always been quite confident as a player. I've always backed my ability to do, not even just that, just in terms of playing at first team level. I've always backed myself to take the ball and take it under pressure, so it's probably me as a player that I'm quite confident. I'm self-belief, and it's just confidence. Yeah.
Have you always had that, even when you were playing as a youngster? Does that come for inspiration for somewhere?
I think it's always helped that I've played up a level. I've kind of had to believe in my ability, as I probably wasn't the most strongest playing up, so I've kind of had to believe in my ability with the ball, and it's probably came for that, playing up in age group and having to be good on the ball.
I spoke to Stuart Ogilvie earlier on today as well. He scouted you for Motherwell, obviously. He said when you were 7, 8 years old, you stuck out like a sore thumb just with your composure on the ball. Was there anyone you watched as a youngster that you took inspiration from? Because it just feels like a rare thing for a Scottish player to have that level of composure just now.
I've never really watched somebody in particular. It's just kind of been all your good midfielders, like your De Bruynes, your Iniestas, your players like that, who have always been good on the ball, and it's the people that I've watched, and it's kind of taken me bits for their game and try to implement it into my game, doing it in training and then doing it on a Saturday out there, and it's just always been in me to try things, and if it goes wrong I'll react and I'll try and get the ball back and I'll do it again, and hopefully one of these times it will come off.
It's crazy to think that you're only 18 and you've already played over 50 games for this club. How do you reflect on the past year and a half?
There's been a lot of ups and downs as a team, as personal. Obviously got the injury and kind of set me back a few months, but honestly it's been a pleasure to play 50 times for this club. It's what I've looked to do since I joined the club at 7 years of age. I've wanted to play first team and to play as many games as I can, and to have played 50 at such a young age is a big achievement for me and my family, and hopefully there's many more.
You spoke about last season. When you came into the team you were playing in a deep lying midfield role for the majority of the season. This season you're playing a bit further forward, aren't you?
Yeah.
How are you enjoying that?
I'm really enjoying it. Obviously adding goals and assists is what I wanted to do at the start of the year, and I think it's probably came by chance. We had quite a few injuries in the forward areas early on in the season, and I've kind of stepped into that role and I've really enjoyed it. It's completely different to what I was playing last year. I was kind of getting the ball off the back three and kind of playing for there, but it's different for me. It's took time to get used to, and I'm reaping the rewards now, and now I'm enjoying it.
I just want to take you back to your childhood. I know you're born into a life of football, but can you remember your first football memory?
My first memory is probably just kicking the ball about in the back and in the house, and destroying mantelpieces in the wall, and just destroying everything in the house really, and just enjoying having a ball at my feet. Yeah. I've obviously been told the stories of going to my dad's games and having balls in the players' lounge and smashing glasses and that.
In the players' lounge at Aberdeen, so Jimmy Calderwood used to, I think I've told this so many times, Jimmy Calderwood used to get the players and their wives, their families, to stay in. Every game would be until he came into the players' lounge. So everybody got to know each other, and that was a kind of a mingling type of thing. And if you didn't have a football for Lennon, you would have to scrumple up a bit of paper or something just for him to volley. Throw it, volley, throw it, volley. And what the story I tell, that in a wee Champions League, an AC Milan Champions League ball, and we threw it, and as he threw it, the manager's wife's come walking in with a glass of wine, and he's creamed this half volley, and it's just smacked the glass all over Jimmy Calderwood's wife, and it was like the whole players' lounge just stopped, and it was like, how's she going to react to this? And she just laughed it off. I said, oh, great kick, man, she was soaking like, and Jimmy just kind of went, that's good, that's good. It was just one of those moments, and everybody that was in the players' lounge will tell you, it's like everywhere he went, he had a football with him, and that's just been him since day dot.
But for me, it was just playing in the house and the back garden and enjoying having the ball at my feet for such a young age.
Your dad told me when you were 2, you knew when you were taking a throw in to dry the ball with your top before you took a throw in. Can you remember anything like that?
I just remember watching football and seeing all these players do it, and I thought I could do that, and even practicing corners for like 4 years old, and I couldn't even get the ball into the 18-yard box, and I just loved taking free kicks and corners, and I just loved the ball at my feet really, and enjoyed every minute of it.
Stuart and your dad told me you'd spent a bit of time training with Celtic when you were a good bit younger. Do you remember what that was like, and do you remember why you felt like you wanted to come out of there and go back to the boys' club level?
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time at Celtic for, I think it was 4 or 5 for a couple of years, and I felt like it was probably too much pressure on me at a young age. I just wanted to go and enjoy my football, and I feel like we were training every night, and at that age I just wanted to play with my pals really, and boys' club was a perfect fit for that, playing with your pals, training twice a week and playing on a weekend, and it was probably ideal for me at that time. There was too much pressures on Celtic and there was no pressure on the boys' club, so I felt at that time it was probably best for me to play boys' club.
Is there a big moment that sticks out in your mind when you think about your academy development that really kicked you on? It's just, the reason why I ask that is because there's a lot of players that have played in Motherwell's academy who have perhaps left and gone to other clubs before they've had their chance in their first team. I'm sure your dad would have gave you great advice that this was a place for you to stay and kick on.
Yeah, there was obviously talks with Stuart that there's a pathway. Like, obviously there's examples of that, David Turnbull, Alan Campbell, Jake Casey. There's loads of people that have, and it's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play first team football because my dad's told me that's the best way of developing really. And you see boys moving on and maybe not hitting first team football, and I seen that and thought that's not what I want to do. I don't want to be playing academy football for the rest of my career really, and I wanted to go and play first team, and I knew this was a perfect pathway for me.
Just touching on your dad, is he a good barber?
I'd say yes. No, it's ideal really, having him cut your hair. It's cheap as well, so no, it's a good thing.
Do you find yourself talking about certain things when you're getting your hair cut? Like, I don't mean like, do you dedicate speaking to certain things at that point, but do you not talk about football then? Do you talk about just normal life stuff?
Sometimes. It just depends really what's happened, and I enjoy speaking football to him really, and my dad's probably the best person to speak to about football. Like, even in the house I'll speak to him. It's just try to get wee bits from him, and even watching the football we'll kind of analyse it together and say what we see, and it's very similar views on football.
He said that he's only ever been hard on you once. You might disagree with that. I think you know when it was. Is it after he played Rangers?
After he played Rangers, aye.
So tell me about that, and do you feel that you needed that at that time?
I was a young boy. I think I'd maybe just joined Motherwell. We played Rangers away, and I remember it. I think I got tackled the first time and kind of went into my shell, playing Rangers, playing the badge really, and my dad hated it. Hated seeing me not wanting the ball and kind of shying away for tackles, and it wasn't me as a player. I've always been getting on the ball and quite competitive, and I wasn't that day. And I feel like I probably needed it. It's probably helped me coming into first team football, nothing's going to be perfect, so you kind of need to take these challenges as a young boy and implement them into first team level.
What has his role been, like your dad's role, in terms of giving you advice? Does he shut up about the tactical stuff and all that, or does...
To be fair, he doesn't really say much. He's only after a game really that he'll see wee bits that I need to get better at, and I'll take his advice because he's played at a higher level than I have played at.
I bet you can't wait to be playing at a better level than him, but then you can say you can give him the advice.
Aye, that's the plan, obviously, to go as high as I can, and I'll take his advice even when I do play at a higher level, hopefully, and because I know he's had so many different experiences, and I'll try and take every bit that I can.
Your dad said to me that he's more proud of the person that you've become rather than anything to do with football. He says a lot of that is down to the way that you've grown up after going through such a traumatic experience when you were younger, with your mum passing away. How much is that a driver for you? I know you dedicated that goal you scored against Dundee United to your mum on Instagram. How much of a driver is that for you?
Yeah, it's obviously massive. Happening at such a young age. Kind of football's been my escape. Kind of just a blank canvas in my brain, and just enjoying it. So football's been a massive takeaway from such a devastating thing, but I just kind of focus on my football, and hopefully I'm doing her proud.
Oh, you absolutely are. The reason I've got to ask, I've actually been through a sort of similar situation myself, and when you go through spells and you think life's unfair and all that, how was growing up for you after that? You said football was an escape for you. Was it just total tunnel vision for you? Football was your way to deal with things when you were struggling growing up?
Yeah, because I felt like every time I was in the house it was kind of catching up to me, and every time I was out on the pitch I forgot about it really. I just thought about my football and enjoying it with my pals with a smile on my face, and then when you get to the house it's kind of everything catches up, but then you always think about football. That was my escape no matter what. If I was upset I'd always think about football. I'd talk to my dad about football. It was just my way of escaping it all.
Do you think in a way that ties in with the way that you play, because you just take risks all the time on the pitch? You think of the way you set up the goal against Celtic last season, the quick free kick you take at Easter Road. So is it just feeling of being carefree when you're on the football pitch, because making a mistake on a football park is insignificant to what you've been through in your life?
Yeah, it probably is a massive factor of that. Also when I first came in, you're kind of, the crowd's booing and that you make a mistake, but that kind of you grow out that, and you think, why not try the risky pass, and if it works you're in on goal, and if it doesn't you reset and you'll try and get the ball back, and I'll do it again, and because there's no point of worrying what people think of a pass or a tackle, so it's kind of all stemmed for that probably.
I'm not going to ask you about the speculation because you get asked all the time, and I know you always give the same answer, but I do want to ask you about Scotland. There's a lot of people that feel that you're ready to step up into the senior squad. Do you feel ready?
I don't really know if you can be ready, kind of. So the honour is playing for your country at any level. So I'm playing 21s now and really enjoying it, because I could still be playing the year below. So to be playing up for your country is obviously a huge honour, and when the first team call comes, I'll hopefully be ready for that. So.
Is it just about understanding that there's a pathway there for you, like just being patient, and rather than feeling disappointed every time you see a squad coming out, knowing that your chance will eventually come?
Yeah, there's no point of feeling disappointed, because there's so many great players in midfield for the country, and it's a joy watching them really. And listen, represent your country at any levels is the main one, but I just want to enjoy my football, and yeah.
I don't know if you've seen this, but your two teammates, Andy Halliday and Paul McGinn, they said you are the best player that they've played with at this age. So when you think Paul's brother is John, Andy would have trained with Billy Gilmore at Rangers. Sometimes you just want people to shut up about that stuff and just let you get on with it, or does it feel good or whatever?
Oh, it feels amazing, because they're two experienced players that have played with so many great players, and for them to put me in that regard's obviously a huge honour. But to be honest, it's kind of put to one side really. Yeah. They're my teammates, I play with them every day, so they obviously see something, and I just try and play my football and see what they say is irrelevant really to me.
Just the last couple of things I want to touch on is the semi-final. How will you feel? I know you're just so composed and you're so laid back, but when you're in the tunnel waiting to go out at that game, will you reflect on your career and think, this is where I want to be in the games that I want to be involved in?
Yeah, it's obviously a huge game for not only me, but everybody in the squad and the fans and the club especially. So we just need to go out there and enjoy it. That's all we can do. We're obviously massive underdogs, so if we go out and enjoy it, and hopefully we can get something, and we'll see what happens.
this club obviously hasn't won a trophy since 1991 as well. Does the weight of that play on your mind?
Not really. Obviously we know it's a massive game for everybody involved, and we know we have a chance to write in history at this club, and that's the main aim, but it's really, we're underdogs, we know that, and we'll go there with a smile on our face and hopefully get a point.
Brilliant. Last couple of things I was wanting to ask you, a few quick fire questions with you.
Yeah.
The first thing is your favourite cheap meal?
Chinese.
Chinese, what are we talking? Salt and chilli chips?
Salt and chilli chips, salt and chilli chicken, fried rice, satay sauce.
Salt and chilli everything with
Aye.
chilli sauce?
Aye.
Yes. What's the best advice your dad has ever given you?
To enjoy it. Every time you step over the white line, just enjoy it.
Who's the most famous contact in your phone? And please don't say your dad.
Contact on my phone. I'll go Andy Halliday.
Oh, he's got to absolutely love that. Who's the best player you've played with?
Oh, there's a few. Ben Doak.
Seeing as you're a midfielder, who's the best midfielder ever?
Ever?
Yes.
Kevin De Bruyne.
And that probably answers the last question. If you could swap shirts with anyone in the world, who would it be?
I'll go Kevin De Bruyne.
Perfect. That's amazing, mate. Thanks very much.
No worries.
Appreciate that.
Thank
you.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
And if you've been affected by some of the issues raised, details of support are available at bbc.co.uk/actionline.